With the presentation, breakout session from Rotary Club of San Rafael Evening. Our learning objectives today is how most Rotary clubs are structured, security, transparency, what goes into the budget for your club and your foundation, tax and legal reporting requirements of the federal and state governments, forming a club foundation. We're going to discuss raffles because I think a lot of times people hear that and they've been really afraid of it lately. So there's some new laws on how to conduct these raffles and reporting. And of course, sales tax. So the structure is the 501c4. I'm sure that many of you have created your Rotary originally when it was created. Usually when you get a treasurer, you're treasurer for life. The 501c4, it's usually really similar to setting up the foundation, except for you're using the codes from the Rotary International. There is a group tax exemption. The foundation is a 501c3 charitable. You definitely have to apply with the federal and state. And then finally, the setup, the finances must be segregated between the two. Some larger clubs have separate boards and bylaws for the two. And we'll get started here. The club budget. So basically, it's prepared by the incoming president and treasurer. It's usually done pretty quickly, usually in June. However, I think everything's been delayed, so it's pretty much set up for the first board of directors Zoom meeting. It's presented for approval by the board. So basically you have income and expenses, and basically the treasurer's job is to basically make sure everything goes into the budget, what things have been approved and things that aren't approved to make sure that there's board approval. So first thing is security transparency. A lot of the clubs use QuickBooks Online. A lot of the older clubs are using desktop or probably even Excel. Obviously for security reasons, we've seen it where the desktop version is locked up, you lost everything, the club has to start all over. So QuickBooks Online and Xero, I've seen both for clubs. It's really great because everyone can actually get in there, see what's going on, run reports, budget. Not everyone understands it, but the people that do work out well. Dual signature for approvals, checks and whatnot. A lot of banks aren't enforcing that anymore for the dual signatures. It's basically the bank just trusts that it's all done. What we've seen used is bill.com. I'm not trying to push any of these vendors on anyone, but this is just the best ones that I've seen. Bill.com allows dual approval, and after the approval's done, then the bills go out. It can be direct deposit as well as checks. So they have really good audit features with all three of these. So if someone does anything, it shows who did it and when it was done. And it's all about security. It's all into the cloud, and that way you're not losing data. Somebody's laptop can't get lost, stolen. It's all set up, ready to go. This was an old club budget from Bruce. He did this last year. Basically, it's just a quick shot. It looks like it was an Excel spreadsheet. Basically just going through the little income. Every year, the board always has something different. And I've always found that when a bookkeeper or accountant or a new treasurer goes in, they always have the chart of accounts left over from 5, 10, 15 years ago. And they're like, what does that mean? So my preference is that since most of these treasurers have been treasurers for life, is to actually create a treasurer's manual for your own club and kind of like a treasurer binder for like notes to pass down to future treasurers. Because sometimes a treasure switch, especially treasure for life, that means something bad has happened or you're not able to do it anymore. So this is something to eliminate, not eliminate, but kind of help with the transition type thing. So as you can see here, this is all the money that was taken in. The biggest expense that I've seen from most Rotary groups is lunches. I don't know how that's going to go in the future. Hopefully all these groups are storing up that lunch money that's coming in to be able to use for good. I've also seen where some clubs are heavily focused on raising money every year for the same exact thing. And I think the best way about doing that is try to come up with like a flat rate, including in the dues, that could help do these same programs that you do every year, as opposed to constantly do the same thing over and over again. Let's see. I've also seen that to do with the saving up money, you know, $15 a month or something like that to try to go towards Rotary International for the Rotary Foundation. So this is just a quick little thing on the income. There's more requirements for raffles and all that other stuff, but we'll get into that in just a moment. As far as club expenses, every Rotary club has difference in expenses. They all have lunch. You kind of come up with the budget, what you're going to do. How I prefer to set up a budget is focus on the 7 areas of focus. I saw the 7th one just added this week. So that way, when you have a committee for those 7 areas of focus, they have a certain amount of money to spend without having to go to the board and board approval. That way they can run their own events. And that way it's not bogged down at the board meetings to decide how every dollar is being spent. Of course, there should be a review. So that's a little bit of a thing for expenses and events. The basically operations, some people have bulletins. Our club does not. Door prizes, we don't have door prizes, but this club does. Lunches, development. So just these type of things. I've always noticed that the supplies are usually the biggest. This one, club that's been around a long time, doesn't need all these supplies, because I see some of these pictures in the background of all these Rotary things. Usually you have a lot of these things in stock. The latest thing right now is the website. Obviously now we have Zoom and all that good stuff. I know a lot of clubs are talking about having a virtual club or having a virtual section where they're going to record the video and have somebody be able to do it actually at the meeting. That would be interesting to see. Let's see here. So you're going to have all these expenses in there. You know, it's best to come up with what is the actual cost to have a new member, especially when you're trying to come up with your annual dues and your monthly dues. The clubs that I'm part of, our goal was to try to eliminate the line to get into the club, especially when you're having a lunch meeting. Obviously with Zoom, you're not having that issue, but we just wanted to focus on new members coming in as opposed to the members that are there every week. So something a little bit more consistent. And we were able to drive down the average lunch cost per member, because if they didn't show up, their money would apply towards lunch. And that will, especially with minimums and all these things, it really makes it a big overhead for the club. A lot of talk has been on, you know, what does these different clubs cover for their president, incoming president. You have all the PETS conferences, RI convention, RI dues. So it's really important that the club in your binder, as well as the board, understands what's included and what's not. Because when we get a new president, they've gone to pets and everything, but it doesn't necessarily say what the club is going to cover as far as financing and what their budgets are. This is kind of a foundation income, kind of like how, I mean, these are just some projects that they're working on. So every once in a while, I've seen where a club has a certain amount of $1,000 a year towards international events and or charities and whatnot. And if they don't do it, it's at the discretion where they'll take that leftover money and put it on the balance sheet towards the foundation. So this way, the money that's not used could be added up over the 2-3 years, and then you have $3,000 for the money that wasn't spent. I've seen a few clubs do that, so that's where the foundation gets involved. They're holding all this money, and it's definitely designated funds. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with designated and undesignated funds. Once it's designated towards a certain event and you sell it to that event, it really has to be used for that event. You can't just change it just because the board chooses so. And if you do change it, you're going to have to go back to the person who actually gave you the money to get permission if they wanted their money to be changed. So those are some of the different caveats with designated funds. If somebody donates money to you or to the foundation and it's undesignated and it can just go towards operations and whatnot, then it's at the board's discretion. This is just expenses. You can see the foundation is a lot less time intensive as far as, and you can even see the budgets are a lot smaller. So the tax and legal filings, most people are able to get away with the 990N postcard. It's probably the easiest thing. It says, did the club bring in $50,000 or less? And the answer is yes. And then they say, okay, thank you for your tax return. Some of your older clubs, larger clubs, you have to get into this easy thing, or just the full-on 990, and that's where the accountants and the CPAs are actually doing the tax return for the club. The offset to that is California. California does have a postcard as well. It's like the 199N, also $50,000, and it's exactly the same thing as the federal. Usually what happens, what I've seen is sometimes there's different treasurers for the foundation and the club. It's important to make sure that every year the taxes are completed and done by a certain date. I believe it's November 15th. And so it's important that both treasurers, basically help each other to make sure that the tax returns and the legal filings are all finished. And of course, you don't want to get the district governor email saying, hey, how come you didn't file your tax return? If you don't file, it can be pretty devastational to your club, as well as the cost of just getting connected with all this stuff. The Attorney General, you do have a form for 501c3s. This is not for the club, but basically, it's a form. It just basically says how much do you have in assets, how much money did you bring in, and you basically turn in your tax return. All your tax returns for all these clubs are online, and so so when you do come up with these chart of accounts and all other stuff, it could in fact be listed, and it is available for everyone to look. The statement of information, this is something that's done for most clubs. It's annual, some is biannual. It depends on your club setup. What I've seen lately is all the clubs are just setting up as being incorporated, and then the statement of information basically costs just $5 to do it. You'll get a postcard in the mail. It does look like junk mail, but it is important in your binder to mention this statement of information, where to do it, and to just review that it make sure it got done. So it's almost like there should be a checklist just to verify all these things. I think you can probably totally get away with some sort of calendar. So I do have little clicks on these things where it actually takes you to the forms. So I believe this PowerPoint presentation should be available online, where you can actually get in and sign up. There are companies that will help you to do these things. It's not really that necessary to pay these different companies a large fee just to file. It's just basically a form, and all the information that you're filling on with their website is exactly this form. Obviously, it's easier said than done because my life is all about filling out forms. So step one is to incorporate. Step two is to get a tax identification number. And of course, this is forming the club foundation. The Internal Revenue Service, even though it's online, they are only open during business hours. After hours, they won't allow you to do it. But the problem with doing this, there's a lot of other companies will look like it's an official thing, and then they come back and charge you to file it on your behalf. So just a word of warning that the IRS doesn't charge you to do this, and once you give them all that information, they have it on their server. And if you don't continue to go on with it because you realize, oh man, I messed up, they still have all this information. So it's really important when you do that to make sure you're on the actual IRS website. It just takes a few minutes to do, and then poof, it just pops up, you print it, and it's amazing how many times you'll be printing this letter and giving it to other people, especially to the next step. You have to apply for the IRS tax exempt. Nowadays, they require you to register with pay.gov. That's just a way that you can pay for all these different fees. That's how they just started doing it. Form 1023-EZ, it's pretty short. It's not that difficult. As the biggest problem a lot of people get is the pie in the sky, the dreams of what they think it's going to be. This is just, you just need to get really real here when you fill this out. Don't get super elaborate and keep it very simple and what you really think you're going to come up with the next year or two or three. Because a lot of times people will make it a lot bigger than they think it is. They think it's going to be bringing in millions of dollars a year. Obviously, that's where we want it to go. But then you're doing less than $50,000. And if you spend a lot of money to do the actual 1023 form with 11 pages, that's pretty intense. So it's basically just keeping it simple for the next 3 years, and you'll find that I want to say 98% of the clubs are going to be there just fine. Next thing is the Franchise Tax Board. That's basically the state of California's section. You do have to fill out a form. They want your IRS exemption letter. It's really important. Just because you're exempt with the IRS, there's nothing automatic with the state of California. Also, there's the Franchise Tax Board. They're the basically the tax cops for the state of California. So if you fail to file your statement of information, or you didn't file with the Attorney General, these are the guys who are going to be giving you your fines. Also, when you first form a club, you do have to notify the Attorney General of California with the Registry of Charitable Trusts. There is a special form, but you know, we love forms. Most people do not. The next thing, after the foundation is all set up and everything like that, I've noticed a lot of clubs stopped doing the little raffles. They got scared of doing the little raffle tickets. It's really no reason to be scared, no reason why the clubs shouldn't do it anymore. It's very simple now. It just came out, I think, February 2020 with these new rules. So it covers the foundation, not the club. The reason why the club can't do raffles is because it's under the umbrella of Rotary International, because there's basically a sub. So the actual foundation is in fact the one doing the work and everything. The requirement is 90-10. Basically 90% of what you bring in has to go to what the reason for of the raffle is, and you can't have more than 10% going towards expenses. You do have to have records for all the money that you brought in and expenses for each raffle. So whether it be raffle tickets, whatnot, basically, I think you can get away with, once you put it into, QuickBooks online and you kind of have a date, but I think you can easily segregate the different dates of raffles as well. The proceeds, this is, a lot of people get tripped up on this. Proceeds must be used in the state of California. And you're like, well, I want to do a raffle for an international project. So the thing is, the proceeds, the advertising, all that good stuff, the flyers, that's all done in the state of California. So you can still have a lot of proceeds used for expenses. So that's where it gets more complicated, where you have 90% of the raffle, then the proceeds in the state of California. They do not allow 50-50 raffles. Basically, they consider that gambling, and that's where it gets really tricky, and you want to stay away from those type of things. They do have forms, so it's an annual form. You just file for it every year. So basically, the new treasurer coming in would file for that. There are certain dates, what you do, and then at the end of the year, you file an annual nonprofit raffle report. So it's as simple as basically 2 reports, so that allow you to have a lot more raffles and not feeling like you're doing something wrong or staying away from it, to stay within the, I call them the Rotary rules. The next thing is the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. It used to be called
Frank, can I interrupt you real quick? There's a question from Eileen about raffles.
Yes.
And her question is, would Registry of Charitable Trust affect club who does not have a club foundation? Those raffle rules you spoke about are for foundations only, not clubs?
That's correct. So basically you can't do a raffle legally, but there's nothing to stop you from using your sister club's foundation if they want to participate in that. So it's nothing like you have to be alone with this. So if you have a sponsor club and it's more of a raffle over multiple clubs, then you can get away with using their rules. Of course, you want to come up with how much you made and expenses. So yes, the club is not legally allowed to do a raffle by itself.
There's a few other questions on raffles. Somebody named Mary Bates would like you to explain the 50-50 raffle legality.
Sure. So let's say you collect, $1,000 and the winner gets $500. So the legality is, they stated on their website that they do not allow it, and it's basically because it's more gaming and gambling is what they refer to. So there's totally a different gambling license that they require to sell to do those type of things. I didn't actually get in there and study what's within the 50-50, but I have noticed a few 50-50 raffles with some clubs over the years. So that's why I was just basically saying you don't want to do those unless you got to contact the Attorney General and fill out different forms, just like when you have an event and you file for, to sell alcohol, just a different section within the state of California.
Okay, there's a couple more questions. Linda Jonas, what about the new thing, opportunity drawing?
Let's see, opportunity drawings. You know, there's a lot with the, they were, they're very lenient as far as these things. They focused more on the actual raffle. When you're giving away, like when something's donated and somebody's like putting money, like donations towards a club and giving something away, they're not more focused on that. They're more focused on just the general raffles, because I know a lot of clubs, they used to always say, okay, now it's a raffle. Some people have changed, got creative with the name, but I have to look more into that actual opportunity thing. I did see that in there, but I can get back on that one.
And one last question on raffles from Daniel Taylor. Do these rules affect raffles conducted at club meetings? If not, what are the applicable rules?
So this does count towards club meetings, specifically because that's where you're collecting all the money. Same with, you know, raffles for, you know, if you're selling tickets from other clubs. I've seen, what do you call it? The football game, Super Bowl raffle, and those type of situations. So it does affect the club as far as, you know, the legalities of being able to say you have a raffle and to collect money and to do these different things. But the best thing to do is to file this. It's just a once a year thing for the foundation, or, you know, if you don't have one, connect with another club who does have one and they're willing to, you know, work on a joint project. That would be my advice there. But technically, no, the club should not be doing a raffle by itself. Is that the questions, Bob?
Yep, that's all the questions at this point. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So I've contacted the state of California. They have a lot of these different departments, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. Since we do a lot of sales tax returns, I was concerned and knew when I first became a treasurer, it was like, okay, we sell all this Rotary stuff, from hats to everything else, pens, we're constantly sell it. What about, do we need to charge sales tax on that? So I did meet with an auditor there in San Francisco. So there is rules for sales tax just specifically for social clubs. It's on page 17 and 35 for those who really want to go in there and dive deep into it. So talking to the actual auditor herself, how the state of California works is when you ask a question and they give you the answer, it comes in writing. And once it's in writing, basically that's your get out of jail free card. You know, you best keep that. So the state of California is not real worried about Rotary or the club. If you're paying the sales tax when you buy things from these, the people who provide it, you know, if you're paying the sales tax, as long as someone's paying the sales tax, how they get into it is if you decide to have, you know, open up your own store and start selling things and not pay sales tax, use your resale tax certificate. So that's what they want to focus on. And I have not seen any Rotary actually have a store besides RI itself and actually collecting sales tax. It's just more you ordering from a catalog, you're paying the sales tax. And to me, if you know, it's $4.35 and it includes the tax and the rest is going towards the donation, they're not worried about that at all. The biggest focus is on the meals, and that's where the tax comes in, because obviously at a restaurant, there are taxes. So normally how the club gets away with that is there's usually a per head count and you pay that way and you're paying the restaurant the certain percentage in the sales tax. So how it kind of gets a little bit weird is when you start doing catering events, and as long as the caterer is charging you the sales tax, they're passing it on. But if you're like making your own meals, doing your own thing, not charging sales tax, that's when you can get into trouble. They do mention that when you have tickets, you actually put on there how much is the cost of the meal and how much is donation. So in that respect, you can almost get away with, there is no cost for this meal. This is just my donation to the club, and all proceeds are going towards what event you're going through. So it's all about the paperwork and what you're stating on there. So are there any questions on sales tax?
None have come through.
Good. Okay. Any questions overall? I know it went pretty fast, half hour.
None. Yes, there are some questions. Waiting for them. Maybe I should just unmute everybody at this point and just let a little free form discussion going. So I'm going to unmute everyone. Okay, you are all unmuted.
Frank, this is Mary Bates. I just want to thank you for your efforts and for helping us along the way. I'm sure we will come up with other questions, and if we have some in the future, should we contact you via email? What works best?
Yes, you can contact me directly, as well as if we're having a new club online. I love new clubs getting started. That's very exciting. I do have rotarybooks.com. No, it's not books. It's actually bookkeeping for Rotary. I'm not trying to sell any of my services at all, but gotta throw in my plug somewhere. But yes, we're more happy to either help a club or just answer questions. We're definitely here for that.
Okay, thank you for your time, Frank.
Thank you.
Frank, where can we get a copy of your presentation today? Is that going to be sent to us, or do we have to go to a website to download it, or what?
Let's see here. I will focus. I think I'll just send this presentation to Bob. Is that okay, Bob?
Yeah, that's fine, and then we'll distribute it. It's going to depend on the size of it, whether we can email it or whether you'll need to pick it up from the website. But if you send it to me, we'll take care of it.
Yeah, it's pretty small. There's no big fancy move-ins and outs, and it's just basically you can click on those forms. So it's very simple. So it should be pretty small.
That's how it is now, but once you send it to me, Frank, I'm going to take some license with it and
Okay. Yeah.
jazz it up a little bit. There's a couple of other questions that have come through on the chat. Daniel Taylor, how do I get training on QuickBooks?
There are plenty of things online. Now there is, if you want to be QuickBooks, become a pro advisor, which is definitely intense. They do offer that training for free. So if you want to become a QuickBooks Pro Advisor in general, you just go to proadvisor.intuit.com, and they do have all the training. You could basically go through the training as well as not do the test. Now, QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online, it is more focused towards accountants, but once you get started into it and just watch some videos, it's really simple. Now, Xero is a little bit more user-friendly as far as non-accounting and different terms, but there is a lot online, and there is some pretty intense training on that as well. It is all, you can do it for free, and once you become a pro advisor, you can pretty much put that on your resume and do all kinds of good things with that. But that would be the best way in the videos.
Okay, Otto Garrett just sent out a link in the chat to some basic training on QuickBooks. So if people are interested, they go down there and capture that link. Eileen Connery has a question, and I might be missing part of this. The green postcards from CA on charitable trusts, and that's just a question.
Yeah, sometimes the Registry of Charitable Trusts, they send out a reminder postcard. The thing is, a lot of times you don't actually see this, or it's misconstrued as junk mail. So a lot of people throw that out. I've only seen the postcards from the Secretary of State. So it's basically, that's why it's important to have the annual checklist for your treasurer.
Yeah, I just got mine in the mail the other day, so you can take a look at it. Don't throw this away.
But you can see how it looks like junk, doesn't it?
Well, right at the top it says Registry of Charitable Trusts. So don't throw this one away. Your green postcard.
Yeah, and the statement information, it's a little bit off-white, and it's just as small and cute as that thing is.
Yeah.
Eileen has another question. What is the book name?
The book,
Yeah, I'm not, this came in a few minutes ago, so you might have been in another section of the presentation.
Okay, I'm not sure. There is no. Oh, the only books that I would suggest is that the treasurer create a binder to pass it on. There's no book involved with any of this.
Okay. David Hellman has a comment. The district grants committee is checking all clubs' tax filing status to qualify the club to do district and global grants.
Right, and I'm going to work with the clubs that are having problems to make sure that they get appropriately geared up to be filing. We've been lenient for this year, but we're going to be less lenient in the future. So I will be helping those clubs that seem to be having problems.
I think you already helped ours. Thank you so much.
Okay, and
that's great because he's also a CPA. So,
and Frank, Eileen qualified it. Frank said he had a book. So did you write a book?
no, I've never wrote a. Now, of course, it says RotaryBooks.com. That's just because we do bookkeeping. We don't actually sell a book.
Okay, and Alan Ning, is QuickBooks available for Macs?
Yes, definitely. I suggest not do QuickBooks Desktop. It's QuickBooks Online, and it doesn't matter as long as you have access to either apps or a browser. It's used. It doesn't matter what anybody has.
All right, I don't see any other questions or comments coming through. So I guess that means we may be done.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Just
so
one,
much.
Thank you, Frank.
just one last question. What kind of reports do most people present at their club board meetings? Is there a standard report package or not?
I would say the biggest thing is the profit and loss and the balance sheet. We also do an actual budgeting. So if you're not doing the balance sheet, basically treasurers come and say, okay, we have this much money in the bank. And then they say, this is how much we had, we budgeted, and this is how much we spent, and this is how much is left. So usually committees love to see that the most because they want to know how much they have left to spend. So if there was one general report that you would be doing, it would be budget versus actual.
Okay.
Frank?
Yes.
Frank Headley, San Bruno Rotary Club. Every board meeting, I give board four reports. One is an updated budget so they know what we've spent, the balance sheet, basically the profit and loss, or 3 reports. And the other is I always give them an accounting of the check register. That way, if they've got any questions, they can ask why that check was written to wherever it was. And that's on every board meeting, and they have to review it and accept it. They don't have to approve it because obviously they don't know if that's valid or not, but they have to accept it, and that gives them the opportunity to raise any questions.
That's good. As far as the budget versus actual, you can actually print out another report of details of the actual details of each, because a lot of the newer clubs are using more of the debit card scenario thing. So it's not a lot of checks, but yes, that's good information for some of those other clubs. Thank you.
All right, any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I have a comment. I use Quicken to do the books. It's a single entry cash basis and it works just fine. I haven't had any need to go to QuickBooks, and I find the simplicity and ease of use to work just fine. So if you have trouble using or learning QuickBooks or any of the other accounting systems, I recommend you just use Quicken. It's very inexpensive, and a club can easily afford a copy of it. A lot of people already have a copy. I just use my personal copy and have a separate file for my Rotary Club accounts.
Now, Quicken is a single entry accounting system, which is perfect for the home, and same with Excel. But to be legal, you have to have a dual accounting system, which is QuickBooks or Xero, especially if you're incorporated.
Oh,
But, you know, as far as sending out the reports, they're not going to hit you up with that. But to be in full compliance, you do have to have a dual entry accounting system.
oh, okay.
Any other questions? All right. I'm sorry, Eileen has a question. She has a comment. QuickBooks Online is too complicated, only for accountants, it's a statement. And her question is, what does dual entry mean?
Basically, it means once somebody can't go in there and if they change things, so it's almost like if there's something in the bank register, it also goes on the general ledger. Nothing can be hidden or changed without an audit trail of the whole thing. So basically, if you take something from this bucket over here, it has to go into this bucket. Basically, from the checking account, it goes into an expense category, and everything is put on the general ledger in the background. So when someone like David, who's a CPA lawyer, when he does your taxes and you go through audit, he's going to want to see the actual general ledger as well as the bank registers and the make sure everything's reconciled. In Quicken and some of these Excel things, somebody can you know, change a formula, as well as there can be some, not to say that anyone's doing anything, that's where a lot of embezzlement happens.
That's a comment right there.
He's like, don't do it, he'll come after you.
Yes. Eileen has another question. So you said not legal for our club not to have dual entry.
Yes, it has to do with the incorporation. I think it's more of the law. I am not a lawyer. I just know it's required.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, that's required by the Accountants Full Employment Act.
There you go.
Because nobody else can figure it out.
I never say I know everything, I have everything, but it seems like we have a lot of people who collectively we do. And I think a lot of times is like, it seems like every treasurer is either a CPA or not. So it's kind of like your brother and sister clubs do have help, and that can ask you with some of these things. If somebody asks me for help with their QuickBooks Online, I'm more happy to help them as a Rotarian.
Retired school district accountant, so this will be good.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions?
You said this whole thing is going to be posted on the district website for us to look at again if we choose?
Yes, it will. It will probably take a few days to get everything,
Fine.
to get it up there and everything worked through, but it will be.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
No, thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank, for
Thanks,
taking
Frank.
the time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye,
All
Mary.
right, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye,
Frank.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.